Hello, 5 cards revealed for the Boomsday expansion. First up is Fireworks Tech, 2 mana 2/1 hunter minion with the battle cry, give a friendly mech 1/1. If it has a death rattle, trigger it. 2 mana 2/1 is terrible. Landing the 1/1 buff makes it better, but triggering the death rattle is the value you need to get from this card for it to be worth playing. We've seen some death rattle mechs for Hunter dropped so far, but the mech requirement is still really restrictive for this card. In a bind, it's alright to buff any old mech with this card, but you should have some death rattle mechs in your deck in mind that you want to hit this card with. So far, I haven't seen any worthy death rattle mechs in Hunter, only the neutral mechanical whelp. So I think right now, Fireworks Tech is just too situational. There are better mech buffs and death rattle activators available that I would much rather run. Next up is Eureka, 6 mana shaman spell, summon a copy of a random minion in your hand. What's cool about the design is that you're summoning a copy, which means you still have that minion in your hand, but it also means your opponent now knows a minion you're holding. It's a little tricky to use because you need only big and expensive minions in your hand for this to work. On its own, it's a good card, but it doesn't really work for any current shaman deck. And Shaman does not seem equipped for a big Shaman. The best minions to get off of Eureka are the big neutral ones, and besides Malygos, there's not really a game plan besides getting value out on the board. Eureka is one of those cards that could probably break the game in some other classes, but right now, Shaman can't really support this great card. We'll have to see what other cards Shaman gets and whether or not they can take advantage of Eureka this expansion. It seems too good for it to never see play in a powerful deck, but this is Shaman we're talking about, so disappointment is always possible. Next up is the Boomship, legendary warrior spell that summons 3 random minions from your hand and gives them rush. Now, Big Warrior actually has some merit. They have board clears, they have big minion recruit, and most importantly, big minions. Using Dead Man's Hand, they can shuffle more copies of big minions into their deck to recruit or summon later. The Boomship can summon 3 big minions for the price of 1, and Rush allows them to make trades with the enemy board. Interesting enough, if you summon minions with charge, the charge ability takes precedence over Rush. So with this card, you could summon a bunch of big minions that can go face. 9 mana is definitely a big investment. It's a legendary spell, which means only 1 per deck, so you shouldn't rely on this spell to win you the game. Big Warrior has the infrastructure to support this card, but depending on the meta, if it's fast or slow, the deck might already have solid enough late game where this card isn't needed. If Big Warrior sees play, I imagine the Boomship will see play in many of the deck's iterations. Next up is Missile Launcher, 6 mana 4/4 neutral mech with magnetic, and at the end of your turn, deal 1 damage to all other characters. Nothing much to say about this card, it's pretty bad. Dealing 1 damage to all other characters isn't that great of an ability. Even when comboing this with a poison ability, it's just not that practical. The fact that it's magnetic is alright, but the effect and poor stats ultimately take away from what magnetizing this to another mech could do. One of the weaker magnetic cards we've seen so far, I doubt it will see play. And last up is Academic Espionage, 4 mana rogue spell that shuffles 10 cards from your opponent's class into your deck. They cost 1. This is a pretty fun card. Comboed with the rogue legendary spell, you can fill your deck with exclusively 10 cheap opponent cards. I still think the rogue legendary spell is a bit of a meme, but using a ton of draw while also continuing to shuffle cards into your deck is a fun premise. Running 2 Academic Espionages is on par with Archbishop Benedictus if you can draw them early enough. And with all of these cheap opponent cards, you can play a crazy Test Greymane, perhaps multiple times. I have no idea if a deck like this will be competitive. Something great about the deck is it would constantly be changing from game to game because part of your game plan is directly influenced by a large number of cards you get from your opponent. Logically, your opponent is playing the best cards they can to try to win the game. The question is, how can you take advantage of these cards to try to win for yourself? It's this deck's ever-changing cards that would make it inconsistent and less competitive, but I'd love for an Academic Espionage deck to be a tier 4 or 3 deck that you can still climb the ladder with. That is all the cards for now. I'll be back later tonight with another one, but until then, ta-ta.